Hello everybody and welcome to another overnight adventure. I'm heading out today to Saddle Mountain for a quick camp and a little bit of exploring. I'll be checking out the Palo Verde mine, a small operation with a few structures left behind, cruising on mostly easy and smooth dirt roads, and ultimately finding a nice scenic place to camp for the night. My trip begins about 45 minutes west of Phoenix, just outside the small town of Tonopah. It's been a little bit since I've been able to get out on a trip due to some family things and the holidays, so I was looking for a quick and simple trip to get back into the groove. Saddle Mountain is one of a few go-to places for me for some great views and nice camping. The rugged terrain and short drive from home makes it really appealing. Saddle Mountain's rugged topography is similar to that of the Superstition Mountains and Kofa Wilderness in other parts of the state. The area has become increasingly popular with RV camping and boondocking, so my goal would be to try and push a little bit deeper to find a secluded spot. Numerous dirt roads from the north side lead directly to different parts of the mountain. Today I'd be trying a new way in and aiming at camping on the less busy eastern side. Just a few hundred feet off the paved road, I came across some intriguing mining remnants. Located on a small hill just north of Saddle Mountain, sat what remained of a small operation. Marked on a topographic map as the Palo Verde mine, it was nearly impossible to find anything out about the history of this site. A couple hours of online digging yielded very little information on the Palo Verde. USGS data confirmed the Palo Verde had a couple vertical shafts, a few adits, and several prospect pits. However, there was no indication of what mineral was found. Mining claims show that the mine may have also been called the SB claim, owned by Tom Thedford and Bruce Hunter. The mine seemingly first appeared on topo maps in 1989, and other small gold mines were worked in the nearby area in the early 1970s. It's very possible the Palo Verde was an extension of other workings and operated sometime in the 70s, 80s, or early 90s. It is clear that the property was abandoned by about 1993 with no operation since. Despite the lack of information, there was still a few things worth checking out. Two small cement foundations remained in a large clearing. These were probably used to hold some kind of generator or maybe machinery operating on site. While it seems they have been used as target practice, they remain in good shape for now. Uphill from the concrete stands was one of two inclined shafts. It was tough to get a good view, but it didn't appear to be more than 50 feet deep. Another vertical shaft sat just to the north of the ruins, closer to the paved road. I continued to the top of the hill. A great view of Saddle Mountain greeted me, and a few trenches remained cut along the hill. Upon further inspection, there were two separate adits on either side of the hill. They did seem to go back a decent way, but didn't appear to be connected to each other. After enjoying the view for a little bit, I eventually returned back downhill. Near the Jeep were a few waste rock piles, some crumbling cement remnants in very poor shape, and a few embedded wooden beams. It is unclear what this was, but maybe some kind of building or shop stood here at one point. What appears to be a small leaching pond also remains. While the Palo Verde didn't seem to be a massive or overly productive operation, it was still neat to check out. The fact that any structures or shafts have survived several decades means something. I've been through this area several times before and never knew it existed until recently. I returned back to the Jeep to get back to the trail. Since I would only be driving a few miles to camp, I left the tires aired up. I set out southbound from the Palo Verde and headed towards Saddle Mountain. The road twisted through some washes but remained in great shape. I stayed right at a trail split and headed towards the power lines. At this point, it was already after 3 o'clock and only a couple hours of daylight remained. I crossed under the power lines, inching closer to the mountain. From here, this turned into a dead-end trail, and one of my planned campsites was at the end of it, but after seeing some people parked up ahead, I turned around and headed for another trail. I returned back to the small junction and continued back south on the other branch of the trail. After passing underneath the power lines yet again, I continued on along the smooth road. Things got slowly more narrow and rocky, but still remained very easy. This was now the eastern part of the loop trail that travels 15 miles all the way around the mountain back to the north side. While I wouldn't be doing that today, it is a scenic drive, although washed out in a few spots. After a few washes and passing a couple more decent campsites, I eventually arrived at a nice large clearing closer to the mountain. I pulled off to check it out. This seemed to be a well-used spot with numerous fire rings. More importantly, it had a great, uninterrupted view of Saddle Mountain, and at this point, no one else was in sight. Just a couple miles from pavement, I parked for the night. Alright, and just like that, we have already made it to camp. Still pretty early in the day. We've got about an hour and a half of daylight left, but this is exactly what I was looking for. Somewhere close to home with a great view to just get out and enjoy a night of camping, enjoy the beautiful scenery that's around, and just get outdoors a little bit. I've camped out here many times before, kind of all in different spots. So the most recent time was actually the very first time I took my rooftop tent out. That was about 2 years ago. I camped on the west side of the mountain. Today I'm on the east side. I was kind of aiming for the northeast side. So this valley kind of leads right up to the high point of Saddle Mountain, and directly on the other side is where I ended up camping last time. So I like finding these kind of secluded spots. It is a really popular area, but most people seem to stick to the north and kind of west side of the mountain. So over here on the east side should be plenty fine. But a good day today, very mild as you saw, not a lot of trail. I got that one cool stop over at the Palo Verde mine and a nice quick camp for tonight. So I'm gonna get setting up camp here and then on to relaxing. The view is a little bit washed out by the sun right now, but within an hour or so, it's gonna be behind the mountain and offer some incredible views. And then of course, tomorrow morning is just gonna be fantastic as the sun comes up and lights up this whole range right behind me. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm gonna get camp set up here real quick and then relax for a bit and eventually get on to dinner. And it should be a great night. I worked to get camp set up. And since I was by myself and only here for one night, things would be kept relatively simple. I popped open the tent and opened up the windows and awnings. I got a chair out and my kitchen ready, and within 10 minutes was all set up for the night. While there was still over an hour of daylight left, the sun would soon be obscured by the 3,037-foot summit of Saddle Mountain. Before I knew it, my camp was in the shadows, and with the sunlight out of my face, got my first good look at what I came here for. The view was certainly impressive, but it would be even better tomorrow morning as the first light of day caught the mountain. I cracked open a beer and sat down to enjoy the view. It was a nice cool afternoon with a gentle breeze blowing. To the west, the various jagged portions of Saddle Mountain rose up. Some parts featured only mild hills, while the higher regions featured rugged rock walls. There's no doubt that Saddle Mountain is a very visually stimulating place. The summit can be accessed via a roughly mile-and-a-half hike that leaves from the north side of the mountain and ascends over 1,500 feet. It's definitely something I would like to attempt someday. The mountain gets its name from having two different high points that form a sort of saddle-looking thing at the top. Despite some light traffic on the loop road and someone making camp a little ways to my north, the desert was perfectly quiet. It was a great evening to be out camping. The light slowly faded and gently illuminated the mountains all around me. Traffic continued to flow along I-10 far off in the distance. I enjoyed sunset before eventually deciding to get around to dinner. For tonight's meal, I would be having this. It's been sitting in a drawer of camping stuff for at least the last 3 to 4 years, and while it's still nowhere close to its expiration date, I figured it would make a quick and simple meal, despite having been pancaked over the years. As the last light of the day faded, I lit the stove to get some water boiling. After changing propane tanks and relighting the stove, I eventually got that accomplished. The meal looked decent on first inspection, and after adding the water, I let it sit for a bit. 10 minutes later, and paired with another beer, I was ready to eat. It looked interesting and smelled pretty good as I sat up in the tent to enjoy the fast fading view. The lasagna ended up being pretty good. It was certainly better than eating an MRE and didn't require a lot of effort. As night set in, the stars emerged. The crescent moon soon disappeared behind the mountain. The view to the east was obviously blasted with light pollution from Phoenix, but looking back towards Saddle Mountain was a little more impressive. I remained up in the tent, enjoying some dessert and a couple of dessert beers. It remained a bit windy, and after a few hours of relaxing in the tent, I finally called it a night around midnight and drifted off to sleep. I made it a point to be up early to catch the first light of the morning. Outside, things were calm and still, with no sign of any wildlife. Slowly but surely, the sun poked through some clouds and lit up the eastern face of Saddle Mountain. I laid in the tent and watched the majestic sunrise, which proved to be worth the effort. The sheer cliffs of the eastern face were slowly illuminated. It was really incredible to watch sunrise, which was just about as great as watching sunset on the other side of the mountain a couple years back. Part of what makes this area so interesting to look at is the geologic history. Saddle Mountain is known as a volcanic upthrust, which occurred in the mid-Tertiary period, some roughly 30 million years ago, and the last volcanic activity in the area ended as recently as a couple million years ago. The outpouring of lava created the rugged basalt, tuff, and pumice that make up the surface of the mountain today. The area is known well with rock hounders who traverse the slopes in search of chalcedony and fire agate, two byproducts of the earlier volcanic events. While the white chalcedony, a variety of agate, is relatively easy to find, like this piece I picked up near my Jeep, the fire agate is far more difficult and rare to find. But when searching in the right places, it can still be found today, as well as the numerous alcoves dug out by other rock hounders. After watching the sunrise for a little while and eventually dozing back off for a couple hours, I was eventually up and around. I fired up the stove to get some water boiling for breakfast and coffee. I enjoyed a quick bite and a few more minutes of the nice view. By this point, it was getting into the afternoon and it was time for me to start packing things up. I put the kitchen away and worked on collapsing the tent. Alright, good afternoon. Had a good morning here at camp, just been relaxing. Slept pretty good last night. It was a little bit windy at first. It eventually calmed down and I was able to get some good rest. Temperature was really not too bad, low 40s maybe. So it ended up being a little bit warmer than I was expecting. I was prepared for pretty cold, but luckily it wasn't that bad. And then waking up to the beautiful sunrise with that view was really nice, just enjoying that for a little bit. Ended up going back to sleep for a couple hours and then just been cleaning up and sitting around, just enjoying everything for the remainder of the morning. And now we're into the afternoon. A few more things to load up in the Jeep and then we'll be retracing our route back out to pavement and on the road home. But overall, it was a great trip and I really like coming out here. A little after 1 o'clock, I packed up the remaining gear and was ready to roll out of camp. This had been a great spot for a quick camp. I returned to the trail and headed back north toward pavement. The further along I headed, the busier it got. It was a holiday weekend, so the area was a little busier than normal. The trail weaved its way back toward the Palo Verde mine, getting even easier after passing under the power lines. I eventually made it back to the mine I checked out yesterday, and was soon back on Salome Highway, headed back to town. This had been a great trip all the way around. I was looking for something quick, easy, and scenic, and Saddle Mountain didn't let me down. It was nice being able to check out the ruins of the small Palo Verde mine, even though there wasn't much to look at and no real history to be found about it. The trails were easy and smooth, and my campsite was perfect. It's always cool seeing places you've been before from a new perspective. I know that this trip was a bit slower paced than normal, but it sure was nice spending some time out relaxing in the desert and taking it easy. Thanks for tagging along on the adventure today, and as always, we'll see you on the next one.